Hari Om. We are today on the 10th mantra of section 2 of chapter 3 of the Mundaka. The mantra reads Tadeda Drishyapyuktam. This is a statement. Now the stanza starts Kriyavanta Shotriya Brahmanishta Swayam Juhutva Egarsham Shraddhayanda Tesham Evaitam Brahma Vidya Vadeta Shirovrdam Vidhivat Aistuchirnam. This is the mantra. So now let's see the word meaning of this as per Shankara Bhashya. Now there is one statement made in the beginning, Tadeda Drishya Pyuktam, which means the following doctrine is explained below, as explained below, is indicated in the Veda mantras. That is what the Rishi is saying as a preface to this mantra. He says this has already been indicated in Vedas. Now he is now saying what is indicated in the Vedas. What does he now say in this mantra? Those who perform the karma enjoined, who are Kshotriyas, who are centered in Brahman, Brahmanishta, and who with faith offer oblations themselves to the fire named Egarshi, perform the vow named Shirovrta, that means who duly carries a fire pot on his head. To those alone, let one teach this knowledge of Brahman. Some of the qualities appear to be eccentric and quixotic, but let us examine what they are in its true sense. Now we will get into the detailed meaning of this. Now the subject matter discussed in the Karma Kanda of the Vedas are not really strictly binding on the Upanishadic portion of the Vedas, which is the Jnana Kanda of the Vedas. Because the purpose is totally different. One is knowledge and the other is action. Yet, when the declarations are non-contradictory in nature, suppose there is a declaration in the Karma Kanda that do not contradict what is stated in the Jnana Kanda, that is Upanishads. They are generally quoted by the Rishis and are considered to be having a persuasive value in interpreting the Upanishads. That is the reason that our Rishi Angiras prefaces this the mantra by saying that these doctrines are already explained in the Karma Kanda of the Vedas. He's just drawing the reference to those. Now a set of eligibility criteria is indicated in this stanza as qualifying factors for getting the Brahmanic knowledge. Brahmanic knowledge in the sense, knowledge of the Brahman. Which are naturally taught by the teachers. Therefore, for teaching the Brahma Vidya, the empirical knowledge of Brahma, the following qualifications are required, which is what he has stated. In fact, a brief but detailed parameters are provided to determine the eligibility of a student to undertake spiritual studies. They are therefore these qualifications would seem that it would divide the community into two classes. the one class as adhigaris, that is the qualified ones, and the other the unadhigaris. Later on, the word adhigari is an apt word. One who is qualified, one who's got the entitlement, who got a sort of a right to undertake the study, is qualified for it. That's the right word. But slowly the adhigari got polluted, and it came to be referred to as a preferred class. So the community got divided into a certain class of preference, certain class of non-preference, adhigari and non-adhigari. And it must be said here that it is the unintelligent and biased interpretation of such scientific mantras by vested interests that lead to the decadence of our dharma, culture, tradition, and even reputation as a nation. This type of wrong interpretations, foul interpretations have all led our country to an abysmal low ebb. And people have started ridiculing us, not really knowing what really happens. It was something like in a football commentary. The commentator started describing the tussle between the two players of that side and this side. He kicked him, the other man also kicked him, then he scratched his face, and this fellow gave him a kick on his back. They started describing the activities of the two players while the football is lying silently somewhere in the corner of the field. So not really knowing the real truth of the declaration, people have started quarreling that you belong to the preferential class, I belong to the non-preferential class, and therefore the non-preferential class should not come near me, should not touch me, should not talk to me. And this led to a tremendous decadence in our culture. Efforts are on, no doubt, by noble souls to set these things right, and we must help such a movement to keep things in its proper perspective. That's the goal, or that's the aim that we should pursue. Okay. So a group of self-centered and self-interested individuals, powerful as they are, at that point in time of history, thoroughly misunderstood the doctrine and ruled, almost decided, that the entitlement is obtained by birth and not by conduct. That was a great tragedy. He who is born in my lineage alone have a right. He who is born in your lineage, he has no right, irrespective of my conduct. That was indeed a great fall. Anyway, please leave it at that. No, we will get into the stanza. Now, any branch of study, my friends, study or endeavor, has certain inbuilt requirements of qualifying parameters. Any study. Though one has the absolute freedom and right to pursue any profession he desires, he has got the right. But he must necessarily abide by the eligibility criteria determined and decided for that particular profession by wiser people who are wiser than you. Be it sports, be it mountaineering, be it business, any specified professional courses, what have you, except perhaps politics. There is a sense of discipline, there is a sense of eligibility criteria, without which you can't go. Spiritual study is not one to be undertaken by a person or a student who have nothing else to do, or by any Tom, Dick and Bhutto. Why are you going to that master to study Upanishads? Oh, I have nothing else to do, so what will I do? I'll study Upanishads. It's not meant for that. Not meant for that. It is a well structured, planned out, and practical oriented course for a long period of time, perhaps a little more than a doctorate or an engineer. Doctor or an engineer. Further, it is an adventurous exercise. Spirituality is an adventurous exercise as it involves gracefully giving up without physically giving away. It is a walk on a razor's edge. A real Dhira alone would be an adhikari for it. Considering the nature of theoretical study and practical application of the course, the wise rishis in the Karma Kanda of the Vedas have indicated certain specific eligibility criteria or factors for being admitted into the study of scriptures. Now we will examine these 6 qualifications one by one, shortly, briefly. Kriyavanta is the first one. It is from the mantra only. I am not creating any word. It is from the mantra. Kriyavanta. Kriyavanta, he who performs the enjoined rites as ordained by the Shruti and Smriti. Rituals performed in the right spirit is indeed an appetizer for further spiritual exercises. Rituals are necessary for elevation to the higher standards, though in itself is not a goal, which we have seen. So Kriyavanta, who does the Kriya as per the ordained doctrines. Next, the second is the Shotriya, means well versed in Upanishad literature. Mere rituals, performing rituals and showing the camphor or putting some havan in the fire without adequate knowledge of their significance will be a hollow effort, and hence a study of the Jnana Kanda of the Vedas, that is Upanishads, will give them the true meaning and significance of the karmas, what they are doing, and you will be able to perform those karmas with greater sort of alertness and awareness. Something like taking a crocin. You take a crocin, the pain will go. But suppose somebody knows the pharmacopoeia of the crocin, who knows what it is, what medicine goes, to which blood, to which vein, to which part of the body it goes, and how it cures your pain. If a person who knows this pharmacopoeia of crocin and takes the crocin, the feeling of that man is totally different from the feeling of an ignoramus about crocin. So you have to know some knowledge for a better appreciation of performing the karmas. Next is Brahmanishta, means who pursues the meditation on Brahma. Meditating on Brahma is Brahmanishta. The theoretical knowledge gained by the seeker or Shotriya should be contemplated upon in serenity, quietude, to grasp the true meaning of the verses learned by him. This morning in the class I had learned this. What does it mean? Let me think. This is the next stage of Shravana. That is manana. First you hear Shravana and then manana. Then it is contemplation. The leisure time of the student should not be wasted in wasteful and futile exercises of brooding over his past, but should be utilized for contemplation of what has been studied. That is one qualification. That is called Brahmanishta. The fourth quality indicated here is Shraddha, who has faith. Faith is a wondrous therapy, wonderful therapy. It is not a blind belief of something that do not exist. That's not faith. Expecting the sunrise after the dark is indeed a faith based on a scientific experiences, but not a blind belief that something unknown will come. Sunrise is not an unknown thing. It will come. It is a faith. It is based on a scientific formula tested by wiser people than us. Therefore, faith, some scholars have said, faith is a bird that feels the light when it is still dark. Very pregnant definition, statement. Faith is the bird that feels the light when it is still dark. The bird knows the moment the darkness is away, the light will come. That is the faith of the bird. I hope you get the import of the meaning. Therefore, faith is an essential ingredient in any endeavor worth its name. Fifth, Swayam Jihvatat Ekarsha. He who offers oblations himself, the function, the karma or the kriya, whatever is being done, he does it himself. One thing we should all understand and appreciate is that the science of spirituality is not dealing with an objective world or objective subject, but tries to conquer the inner self or subjective matter. It's a study of the subjective matter. Therefore, in all the exercises, self-effort is very important. Subcontracting an activity is not permitted for a true student of Vedanta. A portion of what I have to do, I will subcontract. So there's a terminology used for that, modern outsourcing. Yes, outsourcing. The present terminology of this procedure or process is outsourcing. Now today every activity is outsourced. Functions, family functions, get-togethers, lunch, dinner, breakfast, bed coffee, arranging audience for farewell, at railway stations, airports, to make you feel big, and 50 people should come and say, wave your hands and say hi, hi. And when you get into the train, the people in the train should appreciate you. Oh, so many followers you have. Ah, yes, I have. So you subcontract, you outsource these people, because nobody from your family comes. They know that you are a rascal. So who comes to send you off at a railway station or an airport? People are hired for political rallies. Why? For funeral procession also. What to talk of other things? I don't know why they do this, to satisfy whom? The dead body. See, man's ego, if it stretches too far, it becomes to a ridiculous extent. This may be good for material world. We are not touching upon that. Maybe a technique of marketing. Let us leave it. But this is certainly not permitted for self-study of Vedanta. You have to perform the ordained karmas yourself. You have to perform it yourself. Swayam Yuhavat Agarsha, and that fire is called Agarsha. That's a technical part. That particular fire is called Agarsha fire. You have so many fires, Nachiketas fire, Agarsha fire, this type of fires are there. Leave that part of it. But your oblations onto the fire, when you're talking of karma, yajna, yagas, you yourself should offer. Not that today is my birthday, I have organized a Mrityunjaya Homa, where temple priest, he will do it for me. I will sit at home. Prasadam will come here. Outsourcing. Don't take it too far, please. The next one, Shirovratam. This is a procedure declared in the Atharva Veda, where the karmic, for some valid reasons at that point in time, carries a bowl of fire on his head. One may, and that is a requisite qualification for a seeker to study Upanishads. One may peel into a laughter on listening to this so-called sort of a stupid requirements. But remember, Vedic injunctions are couched in symbolism, and you need a discerning mind to decipher its significance. Too literal translation lead to tragic belief of the procedure, and it leads to the conclusion that the procedure is a stupid one. A true and discriminative analysis of this expression can never ever mean the student of such a refined and advanced study of spirituality should have the unique experience of carrying a bowl of fire on his head. Look at the ridiculousness of that. It can never mean that. It is to be understood as a figurative expression couched in a poetic language, irresistible for the rishis, that an ardent student of Upanishad must have a burning desire to intellectually grasp the esoteric meanings of the scriptures as well as the kaleidoscopic nature of life. You should understand, you should have a burning desire in his intellect. A burning desire in the intellect, how is it put it in a cartoon? If you put it in a cartoon, one fellow will stand there, intellect is representing the head, fire representing knowledge. So, fire on the head is understanding in the intellect. That is how it has to be taken. And unfortunately, Veda is couched in that type of style. You can't now change the authors of the style of the authors of the Vedas. So one has to understand, you should have a spirit of understanding, a burning desire to intellectually grasp the subtle meanings of the scriptures and also understand the kaleidoscopic nature of life, the variety of life. Other than this, all other explanations of this qualification is an ugly interpretation. Therefore, those who possess the above 6 great qualifications, as we have now stated, the Upanishad text is an ideal book of self-discovery, and for others who have not understood it in a proper manner, It is a compendium of unconnected thoughts and stupid revelations. So before I end, my friends, this mantra, one piece of small warning. By reading the required qualifications, there are commentators who feel that the Mundaka Upanishad should be taught only to a seeker who has performed Mundaka, meaning shaven head, and goes about with Bhiksha. That is what the mantra says. Tesham evaidam brahma vidyam vedante shiro vradam vidhivat aistu chirnam. And go about in a begging bowl in hand. And they also say the name of the Upanishad itself is Mundaka Upanishad. So you have to do Mundanam to your head before you study this. Mundaka is shaven head. This is an absolute blasphemy. Mundaka, if at all it is suggested, it is again a figurative expression of removing all your desires from your mind and keeping only one sattvic desire. All other egocentric desires have dropped. Keep one desire to be one with the Brahman. And that is represented by the tuft that is left. Why? He could have shaved that also. Why other parts of the head only shaved and this tuft is kept? It is figurative representation. No madman will do it. And where is it kept? It's not kept on the front of the head. It is kept where your Brahmarandram is. That ultimate randram through which the life goes out. That is a place where the divine tuft is kept. So please do not get upset on these blasphemous interpretations. Please go ahead. And for God's sake, we have been taught to close our eyes to go to sleep. But after studying the Upanishads, please learn to close your eyes to wake up. Let your eyes be closed in the waking stage too. I am saying this from a figurative angle. Don't take it too literally and say that the moment you get up, close your eyes and start walking around like going for a Vishukani and then tumble upon objects in the house. That's not what I meant. We generally close our eyes to sleep. Now close your eyes when you are in the waking state to understand what the waking state is. That should be our aim in life. Let's do that. And that's the purpose of the study of Upanishads. I do hope that you have got a hang of what the Upanishads are. And tomorrow is the concluding stanza. The Rishi blesses all of us. And with that blessings of Rishi, with Shanti Mantra, we will conclude the Upanishads. It has been quite a arduous exercises for both of us. But then somehow God is great and we will definitely have a tomorrow to conclude this Upanishad text. Later what to do we will definitely see and we will come back with some suggestions. Hari Om.